Hello, Rob from Fountain Pen Journey. Right, today's video, pen review of the Noodler's Ahab. Now, be prepared, this is a potentially long video because there's an awful lot to discuss. First off, this is important. See this Ziploc fancy sparkly pink pencil case that I have here that seals and is effectively watertight? There's a very good reason for this, and we'll get onto it later on in this review. But let's concentrate on the pen for now. So let's discuss the Noodler's Ahab. Let's get these things out of here. These are the Noodler's Ahabs that I currently have inked up. Now, wow, first off, these things smell. There is a real stink. They're made of a vegetal resin. All of the Noodler's Ahabs are made of this vegetal resin, which is like a sort of plasticky acrylic. Well, it's not. No, it's not. It's not. It's like a stinky. It's a horrible smell, really. You can get rid of it using coffee grounds or something. You put the plastic components in a jar with coffee grounds in, and that's supposed to absorb the smell. Sunlight is also supposed to get rid of it. Personally, I don't know. I've not tried it. I don't find it that offensive. It's just at first when you open a bag or literally have a good old sniff of the pen, you notice how much it actually smells. And it will put some people off because it smells like it's been pushed up somebody's bottom. It's a very strange, unpleasant smell. So that is the first thing to note about the Ahab. It's sold, or is intended as an affordable, flexible nib fountain pen, which is what most people come to the Ahab for, and other Noodler's pens. And to be absolutely honest with you, we'll discuss the flex later on in the video, but if you're after a first flex fountain pen, this might not be the pen for you. Please keep watching because there's an awful lot to discuss in this video. It's affordable, definitely. Under 20 quid, $20, whatever. I mean, I buy all of my pens from, I believe these come from Pure Pens here in the UK. And they often have some sort of discount code or even a discount specific code for Noodler's products, which I use, and which is why I've built up a collection of these. Now, as much as people don't like this pen, you can see that I really do quite like it. I've got 5 different colours here. I've got some more in a drawer over here, which I'll show you. They're not inked up, but they're in the collection. And the nibs are all the same because they're the same steel flex nib, so there's no difference there. But the nibs are good when you get them to write properly, and they do a really cracking job of having really, really good line variation. So let's start off by looking at the actual pen. We're going to do a top to bottom of these pens, or one pen, and I will pick this. Now this one is the Mandarin yellow colour, which is basically a straight, completely opaque yellow colour. Now there is some darkish swirling in this vegetal resin. Scoot these babies out of the way. Side comparison with the Lamy All-Star Tourmaline. And they are almost, I'd say they're exactly the same sort of length. Not much to it. Uncapped, let's have a look. Noodler's has a screw cap. So nib to nib, same length, posted. Now, the Ahab does post. Really, it's not deep, but it's really secure. Really, really good pen posted, if that's your cup of tea. Safari, All-Star Tourmaline. The All-Star and Safari identical, basically. And as you can see, they are almost identical in length and everything too. So let's pop the Lamy out of the way. So, recap this. So, cigar-shaped, classic cigar-shaped fountain pen. It's not a heavy pen, but it's not light either. It's a decent enough weight, and these pens with this vegetal resin are robust. They are solid, you know, chunky pen. So this is a good pen. It feels nice in the hand. It's a good width. It's a good length. It's a good girth. Everything about it. The whale-shaped clip, as you can see, says Noodler's ink on there. These are made in North America. Come from Nathan Tardif. And I'll just get one thing out of the way while we're discussing this. The Noodler's Ahab has had a huge amount of criticism because people have bought it going, oh, it's a flexible nib fountain pen for a fifth of the price that a second-hand one costs. And then they write with it, and it doesn't write for them because they haven't done something correctly, which I'll get onto. And therefore they go, oh, it's a rubbish pen, I've just blown a load of money on something that doesn't write. That is not the case, as you will see in this review. So we've got Noodler's ink engraved on there, and down here we have got, try and read this. Noodler's ink, nothing else. This is the Ahab, and it's got this whale-shaped clip, which is, in my view, a bit, it's too high, and it's sloppy. There's no spring to it. It does the job. It slides onto stuff, but it's a bit wishy-washy. That is in this, between the finial and the top of the cap, and this, when you're trying to unscrew the pen, sometimes you'll find that this rotates the clip. The clip turns as well. Cap band, which, yeah, is what it is. Barrel, nice cigar-shaped pen, which suddenly tapers down to this sort of end thing down here. Unscrew cap. 1, 2, almost 2.5 turns, which in my view isn't excessive, but it's perhaps a little bit more than I'd like. There's nothing going on inside the cap, nothing of any interest. Steel nib, flex nib. You can replace these nibs with non-flex nibs. I believe they're a number 6 size nib, so that's an easy one. So if you don't like the way that your Noodler's pen flexes or writes and you can't be bothered tweaking it, then you could always just slide this out the friction fit and slide in another number 6 nib of your choice and have a, if you like, normal fountain pen. Underneath, ebonite feed. Unusual at this price point to get an ebonite feed. Normally black plastic, but we have an ebonite feed. The section's a really nice girth. I find it comfortable. It's a good width, girth, grip, whatever. Threads out of the way of your fingers. Sharp, not really. No, you can feel them if you were holding the pen this far up, but I don't know why you'd do that. So the pen fits comfortably in the hand. It's a good length, and posting it just on there, yeah, decent length. Really nice sized pen. Sorry, I've got the windows open because it's actually a really warm April day here, but it's a really good size. Really nice. There is a step up, but it is not that sharp, and it's quite low, and you really don't feel it. Right, let's get a different Noodler so we can have a look at what's going on inside this. This is the Arizona colour scheme, which is orange and yellow. Really nice. I love this colour. And it's good that you get the same colour sections, matching sections. Unscrew this. And there is a O-ring. Now these O-rings, I find that these things tend to break for absolutely no reason whatsoever. They're not very high quality, and you can buy a pack of O-rings from various pen retailers. Pure Pens in the UK, for example, sell a pack of, I don't know, 10 for a quid, £1, something like that. Can't see what's going on in there, but these things are a proprietary filling system, which is of its own, and it sounds like a terribly bad thing, but it really isn't. I'll talk you through that in a moment. Barrel, machined out of the single same piece of vegetal resin. You can eyedropper these, and this is what this O-ring is useful for. So all you need to do, and this is what I thoroughly recommend as a filling system, get some silicone grease, rub it on the threads of this section, just not huge amounts, just rub it in there and rub it around to the O-ring. Fill this pretty much, this barrel up to close to the threads, maybe 1 centimetre down, with ink, and this is an awfully big ink capacity. Don't do that. Fill it with ink. Bugger. Right, get your section which has got the silicone grease on and rethread it. There we go, tighten it up, and you have got an eyedropper's Noodler's Ahab with a massive ink capacity. That is how I'd advise you to use these pens, because I'll talk about the filling systems. There are 2 more of this pen in a moment. So there's the pen. Let's talk about the filling systems. Now, there are 2 other options. So you can eyedropper these pens, which is what I've done with these pens. These are eyedroppered. There are also these, these things. Now these usually come with the pen. This is what you get. You buy a Noodler's Ahab and it comes with one of these fitted, and these screw into place and they seal reasonably well. And what they are, it's like a captive converter. So you've got a rather tight, it probably needs a little bit of silicone grease inserting in there and down the sides so that this moves a bit easier. So you've got a captive converter that screws into the section, and you push it down, pull it up, and it fills this chamber of the converter with ink. Now this bit up here, that is also hollow. It's not, there is a hole in the bottom of the O-ring there, so this bit also fills up with ink. Now one thing to remember is that when you have a, let's try and find one with all the various bits included. Let's have a look at, oh come on, don't be a pain. Right, what have we got? There we go, here's another one. Unscrew this. Let's see what we've got inside here. There we go. Right, now you can see, right, this is what can go wrong. Out of the ebonite section there is this tube, this thin plastic tube which just kind of pushes in there. That then, it should be straight. This one I've bent. I didn't even realise I'd done that. And that should slot inside, and I'm not even going to do it because these things are actually such a pain. That should slot, and it's easier, actually I'll show you, it's easier to do if you have the plunger piston descended, because then you can thread this inside of the, you see the hole there? What you want to do is thread this through there while the plunger's down, and then screw this converter onto the section like that. So there you go. So that's the nib unit with the captive converter in place and the plunger down. Pull this up, and what that tube serves, the purpose is to not only draw ink, the ink will be drawn up through the feed and fill the chamber of the converter, but it will also fill this tube, which will fill this space in this hollow bit here. That's what I was talking about earlier. So you've got a fuller ink fill. So that's one option for this pen. And the other option, besides this version with the captive converter and the, you know what, I'm going to, you see these things, they only literally just perch in there, and it's a bit of a pain. There we go, it's fitted into the middle. Pop this down, slide that onto there, screw that back down. I'll only withdraw that a bit because I want to keep that sort of in place and straight. Right. Okay, let's get the next filling system. Now, these are available as a separate item to purchase. Nathan Tardif, when he designed the Noodler's Ahab, wanted a flex pen that was something that you tinker with, and he wanted it to be different to everything else on the market, including the filling system, which isn't a bad thing because I actually really like what Nathan's done with this idea. You can buy these things, which are basically refillable ink cartridges. This is the right way around. This one is sealed. I'll just try and read the writing on here. Which Noodler's Ink Company, removable 300 cartridge. I think it's 300. It could be 305. The idea behind these are basically it's a sealable, refillable ink cartridge. So this and this little end bit here with the grip unscrews, and there is yet another little black rubber O-ring there. These things, basically, you've got an empty ink cartridge that you fill with ink, silicone grease on the threads again, and then you cap it with this. So you can transport these things around on their own. I mean, you could use all of these, fill them with all sorts of different inks, or one ink, whatever you want. So you've got a supply of ink, and when your Noodler's Ahab runs out of ink, all you have to do is unscrew this. This one doesn't have the captive cartridge, the captive converter rather, in place. So you've got your thing full of ink. Remember, silicone grease. So you unscrew this cap, take that off, and that then screws onto the back, which is an absolute nightmare over the camera. There we go. Screws onto the back there, and then you screw your section into this. So then you have quite a big ink capacity in there. It's portable and it's reusable, easy to fill, easy to clean, easy to carry around. So it's a really, really excellent filling system, which I actually really, really like. However, I find that eyedropping these pens is less messy, quicker, simpler, and you get an even bigger ink capacity. So that is what I do with my pens. So all of these, you can see the different materials that the Ahabs are made of. When you buy a pack of these, you'll get all sorts of different colours. So forget about trying to match them to the pen. We have a hard enough job in the fountain pen community matching inks to pens. We don't need to start trying to match converters to pens with the inks and everything else. So that aside, screw this back together. Right, let's have a look at the colours. So first off, and I'm going to get these colours wrong because I can never remember them and they're not the most descriptive. So there's basically three different types of Ahab colour scheme. There is the demonstrator version, which they're not called demonstrators usually. I know that some retailers might market them as demonstrators. This is the Tokapi Amber, which is a rich amber red colour, and it is clear, and you can see how much ink I've got sloshing around in there. Loads and loads of ink, huge fill. So clear demonstrator, you can see the focus. There we go. Not you, sorry viewers, I mean the damned camera. You can see the nib feed and everything in there, and all the ink. So huge fill in there. So that's the Tokapi Amber. The Mandarin Yellow we've already seen. Midas Pearl, which is a nice metallic brown with a grey swirl in it. It's vegetal resin, but it's got this metallic sheen. It's very attractive when you see this metallic sheen. Opaque pen. There's no chatoyancy with this, it's just got this metallic effect. This this green one. I think that this is... Nah, it could be Lake Huron, might not be. It's very similar to another green that I have called Truck Lagoon, all named after places in America. I'm not well up with my North American geography, so sorry if I'm offending lots of North American viewers by mispronouncing things and not knowing the history of Apache in Native American Indian names, things like that. So yeah, there is another one. This one I bought as Tiger, but I believe that this goes under some other name. So it's this sort of salmon pink and black marbled colour. This one I believe is Navajo turquoise, which is a very nice colour. It's got quite a matte looking background with metallic grey swirls in it. That's quite attractive. This really nice version here, very similar to Mandarin Yellow but with black streaks. This one is called Bumblebee. Very, very nice looking pen, bit different. The beautiful Arizona colour scheme, which I love, nice rich orange and yellow. Let's see, I've got a few in here. In my Noodlers drawer. There we go. Okay, this one is Iroquois, which I love. This is a really nice brown, black and metallic grey colour, and it is a little bit translucent as well. You can actually have, if you hold it up to a strong light source, you can see through it, which is quite useful because you can even see the ink level in there, so that's quite nice. This one is Rube, Burmese Ruby, which is very similar to Tokapi Amber. As you can see, one is red and one is slightly more orange. So that is that one. And what else have we got now? This one, I believe. This is another favourite of mine. I do like the yellowish ones. This is another one of the demonstrator type materials. This is Carnelian Honey, and matched with a really nice dark blue ink. I think that's an absolutely stunning pen and ink combination together. So Carnelian Honey. So as you can see, there are quite a few colours available, and there are more. There are many more. You can even get plain black ones, white ones, whatever it is. There's something to take your fancy. Pens usually come in these Noodlers Ahab boxes, and Pure Pens always seem to send these out with a spare nib. Really not sure of the reason why. I don't know whether that is the same for all retailers, but it's something that that some people seem to be doing. I don't know if these nibs are unreliable. If you happen to, I think sorry, bash the camera. I think some people may be inclined to overflex the nibs, and of course then you've overflexed it, you've completely springed the tines, and yeah, excuse me Mr. Retailer, please can I have a new nib? And rather than say, well, you broke your pen, I think they'll probably just include a spare to save themselves a little bit of grief. So that is always a nice thing if you get spare nibs. Steel nibs, nothing fancy. Okay, right, well, let's sort out the ones that I've got inked up. That's these ones. Okay. So, we've covered the filling systems, we've covered the pen. Let's talk writing experience. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a link down below, and I'd also try and put a little thing that pops up there with some text on, which says, here's a link to my Noodlers Ahab will not write, here's my quick easy fix video. It's a how-to video, and quite honestly, when I first bought, I bought, I don't know, 4 of these pens originally, not these ones, and this is why the pen gets such a bad reputation. Straight out of the box, none of them wrote. They all burped ink like crazy, and I mean literally, you would uncap the pen and there would be an absolute cap full of ink in there, and it would go everywhere. And then you'd try writing with the pen, and as you're writing, there would be ink just pouring out onto the paper, and yet the nib wouldn't actually write. It was massively infuriating. And then I learned about trying to get the feed all mess around with the feed and everything, and it's a horrific experience if you don't know what you're doing. But if you watch my video, and I will also include the link to the video in the comments, not the comments, in the description of this video down below. So hit the down arrow, there's a little triangle thing, hit that, it expands the description of this video, and I'll put the link in there so it's easy enough to find. I'll try and do an end card to this video with that as well, because there is an awful lot of really simple stuff that you need to do. You buy one of these pens brand new and you basically must do it. I'm just going to very briefly cover it. First off, take your pen apart. Take the whole thing apart. I mean everything. Take it all apart. I'm not going to do it with this because I have set up this pen and it's a bit of a bind. If you haven't, I'll have to mess around with it. But you basically pull the feed and the nib out, slides out. There's a bit of resistance in there, and you take everything apart and put it into a bowl of warm, very warm, soapy water. Now, soapy, use washing up liquid, dish cleaning detergent, you know, the stuff in a squeezy bottle that you use for washing your plates and cutlery, things like that. Make it quite soapy and get a sponge and rub and clean every single part. Clean the nib, clean the feed, get into all the grooves section, clean all around there. Give it a good old rinse and soak in the bubbly water. Same with the cap, same with everything. You want to get every bit of manufacturing grease off this. You want to get it off the captive converter, everything, because it's all over there, and there is a lot of manufacturing grease on these pens, and it stops the ink flow. So if you've got ink flow problems and you don't want to mess around with the pen too much, that is your first port of call. Secondly, when you reassemble the pen, nib and feed, there is a groove in the top of the section, and the back of the nib absolutely must fit in there. If you push this in and it's not in there, you're going to get an incredibly tight fit. It's going to be very, very difficult to get the nib and feed back out, and it's not going to be, your pen will not work. So you must reinsert the nib carefully, and the feed. Hold them together so that you've got that sort of clearance between the end of the nib and the tip of the feed. What I always tend to do, and the rule of thumb is this: count approximately 9 fins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10 here. Your mileage may vary, and depending on how far you pull out the feed, so you might have 11 or more fins, it might make the pen wetter or drier. If you push it in further, wetter or dry, depending on how you set up your pen and your nib. Sometimes you might not want to insert the nib quite as deeply as that. This seems to be the optimum for me. So this is what works for me. So if you're in any way uncertain, go for about 9 exposed fins with that sort of clearance on the nib and the feed. And then, just to be absolutely 100% certain that this thing's going to write before I start filling it with ink and swearing at it, what I do, I heat set the nib and feed. Because it's ebonite, hard rubber, heat set it. It's malleable when you get it really hot. So get a cup of water, boiling water, leave it to go off the boil for a bit so it's still really, really hot, and just insert the nib and the feed in it. You don't have to insert the whole section, just insert that in the hot water for around about 20 seconds. Take it out. If you're a man of steel, squeeze them together like that with your fingertips. It's bloody hot, so I'd recommend using a tea towel or some other means to protect your fingers, because you need to hold on to that for a good 15 to 20 seconds for it to cool and set the ebonite material against the steel of the nib. So it's not fusing it, it's just moulding to its own individual, if you like, ecosystem, or its own little microclimate. So then you know that you've got good contact between the nib and the feed. You've got the nib and the feed in the right place, you're good to go. Sorry, it just bashed the camera. So that is what you need to do. Saves you watching the video. It's an important point, because I don't want people to hate the Ahab. If you hate the Ahab and you've still got one in your collection lying in a drawer somewhere, follow those little bits of advice, and I think you'll be quite surprised at how good these pens are for writing. So let's get on to the writing experience. Rhodia pad. I'm going to get some of my notes out here, because I've got all sorts of different inks in these Ahabs, which are quite nice. So let's start off. I'll pick an ink which isn't too crazy. Well, actually it is. These pens lend themselves to crazy inks. If you've got a monster sheening ink, these are pens to use for that, because you can get some really good colours out of your inks with these pens. Because they're flex, they lay down a lot of ink. You can make them drier, as I said before. These are pens to tinker with. If you wanted, you can even cut away channels, open up the ink channel, cut away deeper fins into the ebonite feed. This is a pen that Nathan Tardif of Noodlers designed to be messed around with. It's not a beginner's fountain pen just to buy it out of the box and you've got a vintage flex pen experience. No, it is not that pen. So let's start off with the title. So, Ahab, not a D, Ahab. God almighty, you know what I'm talking about. So, what I'm going to do a normal writing sample, because these pens theoretically make really quite good everyday writers, but there are a few caveats. So let's just start off with a no pressure writing sample. So absolutely no effort to write with this nib at all. The flow is absolutely excellent. Let's press down a little bit more, and yeah, blimey, these are wet nibs. So even though this nib with no pressure is, in my view, fine, maybe even an extra fine, fine, I'll go with fine nib. It's quite wet. Now, obviously, these are flex nib pens, so you want to see what the line variation is like. So, no pressure, bit more pressure, a little bit more, and lots of pressure. So you get huge amounts of line variation here. And I'm not going to push this so far that it railroads, but these nibs do. And if your nib is railroading, you might have to slow down your writing, because this is going to be using a vast amount of ink really quickly. The feed might not be able to keep up. If you're having railroading issues, then that's where you might actually have to start thinking about cutting a deeper channel inside the feed, cutting out the odd fin, things like that, to get the ink flowing even faster down to the nib. But that is going to depend on your writing style. Let's just have a quick look at this ink, because this is the reason that I use these pens. So it's a black ink, and this, I must admit, this is Rhodia paper, which I am not a fan of for sheening inks. Just turned on the light. Yeah, there we go. We've got the gold shimmer there. So this ink, this is a UK exclusive for Pure Pens. I'll write down the ink for you. So, Pure Pens Welsh Gold. It's exclusive to Pure Pens in the UK. It's made by Diamine, and it's a black ink with lots and lots of gold shimmer, and it's really great. And these pens are really good because they hold a lot of ink. You can flex it out. So if I really, really want to give it lots and lots of line variation and lots of ink, this is going to take forever to dry. But you can already see gold shimmer, lots and lots of gold shimmer. So, and that is going to take forever to dry because these pens are very, very wet. To be honest, I also find that Noodler's inks in these pens are almost a no-go because they just seem to take hours, and I'm talking hours, to actually dry if you lay it on thick. This isn't too bad. That's actually drying quite nicely. You can see that lovely, even with the smear there. And this is on Rhodia paper, which is usually a bit rubbish for shimmering inks. But you can see, wow, that looks absolutely great. So it is drying. It is drying. Looks like I've almost painted it on. There's so much ink gone on the page there. So that is one example. Now, as far as let's move. I want to show you the other inks in these other pens because I feel that because I've got all these pens inked up, it's worth seeing what these look like. In fact, Toe Cappy, I believe this one is. So this pen is the Toe Cappy Amber version. You can see just normal writing, no pressure, and then you get this fine line, and it's absolutely great. I'm not going to write like this all the way through, but just to give you an idea, normal writing and flexy, 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 lovely. This ink is the Pelican Edelstein ink of 2019. Edelstein Star Ruby. Wait, oops, Starry, bloody hell. Star Ruby. There you go. Really, really nice ink. Gorgeous colour. Nice sort of reddish pink. Have a look at that. Really, really nice. This is a slightly drier ink. Wow, look, gold shimmer. Really, really, really nice ink. In fact, I don't feel that the camera's doing it justice. It's a very nice colour. Very, very good ink. So that is those. Let's tear this off and look at some other inks. These pens have all been set up the same, but you will get absolutely minor differences between the two, which is understandable because you can't guarantee that every nib will be inserted to the right millimetre, have the right number of fins out, things like that. This version is Midas Pearl. And this ink is Diamine, however you want to pronounce it. I believe it's Diamine. My chemistry background just wants me to call it diamine. I'm sure that's not what the company originally intended all those many, many years ago, based in Liverpool. Sorry, my dog's going a bit nuts because kids are going past. Hates kids. Which one's this? Shimmertastic. Diamine Shimmertastic Cocoa. Right, I can't spell cocoa. There we go. Cocoa Shimmer. They obviously ran out of brown names for this ink. And it's a brown shimmering ink. Surprise, surprise. There you go. I mean, you can see how much ink this pen can lay down. We'll come back to that in a minute. Let's go with a really boring ink, which is... Okay, right. This one, I've actually got the name of this coloured pen, this green pen. This is Maximilian Emerald, which is very, very similar to the similarly coloured Truck Lagoon. So Maximilian Emerald. And I have a feeling that this pen is about to burp. It's really chucking ink down. So, Octopus Inks. Tiefgrün. Always spell this the wrong way around. Tiefg umlaut. Dark green, basically Octopus Inks dark green, which is absolutely ordinary green ink, nothing fancy, but it lays it down, and this is a nice pen, and you can see how much ink this holds. I don't know, I think it's about 5 millilitres of ink when you eyedropper these pens, and when you really flex these pens, those little converters and even the cartridges, which hold a little bit more, they run out really fast. If you want to use one of these pens for a lot of writing, eyedropper them. It's the best thing you can do. Right, let's move on to the Tiger colour scheme, which I still don't believe is Tiger. And I have set this one up a little bit incorrectly, so this may well burp ink. What ink have I got in here? Try and remember. Oh, it's Diamine Shimmertastic Frosted Orchid. Which is quite a dark purple. With a silver shimmer. So we'll get back to that in a minute. Now, going right back to the start of this video, and this is an important note. Remember my very girly pink Ziploc pencil case that effectively makes it watertight? Reason for that being, the Noodler's Ahab has a real tendency to leak. If you've got a captive converter in here, or the cartridges that I talked about, if you have these as everyday carry pens, which these things lend themselves to because you've got such a good line variation, they tend to leak into the barrel of the pen, which is annoying, but that's one thing. But my God, they also leak into the cap. So even, you know, whatever filling system you use, if you jiggle one of these pens around in a pocket, put it in your bag, you don't think you're moving it around much, you'll find a cap full of ink, and believe me, these caps hold a lot of ink. So messy. I have on my desk here, and I know that it could also be construed as being part of the current situation, but I have got a pack of tissues, and that's not for any disease-related or nefarious purposes, but the fact is that they are there because these things, the Noodler's Ahabs, do have a tendency to burp ink. As you probably saw when I did my recent video, you can see what these things are like. They do burp ink. Not all the time, and quite often I haven't had one of these things burp ink on me for a while, but you know, they can be messy, so you always want to be near a source of paper towels, tissues, something like that if you're using a Noodler's Ahab. They make very good desk pens, very, very poor everyday carry pens, because you will end up with ink all over the place. I must admit though, these caps actually seal really well. So even if you have this in a pocket or a bag, you're not going to know that the cap is full of ink until you unscrew it, unless you use one of the demonstrator versions, because then you can actually see if there's any ink pooled inside the cap. So that is one thing to remember with the demonstrators. Useful feature, safeguarding. So why have I got a girly pencil case? Well, it's not mine. It's actually something that I think came with some makeup brushes for my wife. And I said, oh, can I have that? Because that could be really useful. And it is. So far, touch wood, I've never had any leaks inside this, but I can pretty much guarantee if I put these things in a drawer somewhere, I'll end up with ink in that drawer. Almost guaranteed. They wait until your back's turned and then squirt ink all over your house. So that is one other downside with these pens, and it's something to remember if you're going to be carrying these things. So just go back to the inks. So Cocoa Shimmer, brown ink, nice golden shimmer rather, not sheen. Nice gold shimmer. Really, really nice. Maximilian Emerald with the octopus teeth groon. No, nothing there, obviously. Frosted Orchid, Diamine, Shimmertastic, Silver. And that ink is still drying. So this down here, you can see that top line still wet, still drying. And bear in mind, this is Rhodia paper, which is never very good for shimmering inks. So these are really, really nicely shimmering inks. Really, really nice. So there we have it. We'll get these back in frame. So Noodler's Ahab. Do I recommend it? Absolutely yes. Big thumbs up from me. Originally it would have been a massive thumbs down. And if you have any doubts and you happen to be watching this and you've still got your Ahabs and you go, the Ahab's a rubbish pen, please just try the little tips and follow the video that I've stuck down below, because you could get this pen to write really well for you. And I feel that the Ahab has had an awful lot of bad press. It isn't a beginner's fountain pen. It's a pen that's supposed to be affordable so that you can mess around with it. You're not spending a huge amount of money, and if you, I don't know, carved great chunks out of the ebonite feed and ruin it, you know, you haven't wasted a ton of money. But you don't necessarily need to even do that. So don't think that the Ahab is a terrible pen. However, one thing to note, and this is vitally important, if you're new to fountain pens, think about, do you actually need flex? I know it's like something that people seem to go, oh, I've just got into fountain pens and I want to buy my first flex pen. I think I might buy the Ahab, Noodler's Ahab, because it's cheap. No, unless you actually know what you're doing and you're willing to do those little things, and it's not difficult, unless you're willing to clean your pen, mess around with the nib and the feed a bit, just pushing it in the right depth into the section. Don't bother with this pen. This is not going to write out of the box for you. Some do, some don't, but that's the luck of the draw. You make 100 pens, you make them by hand, you insert the nib and feed, a percentage of them probably will write perfectly well out of the box because they just happen to have been inserted well enough. And if you use some really good pen flush that takes off the manufacturing oils, your pen's going to be fine. But chances are it won't be. And this is why people have gone against the Ahab and written it off. And it's unfortunate because I think that this pen has an awful lot to offer. It's a beginner's sort of mess around fountain pen. You can muck around with it, and if you make a mess of it, you haven't lost a lot of money. If you're after a vintage flex, i.e. a really soft flex with lots and lots of flex in the tines, which I'll show you here. I'll try and zoom in a bit. There we go. So, see, no pressure, and really push. There we go, railroading. There we go. Flex the tines too much, ink starvation, railroads. But it's back to writing again because I've set up this nib and feed correctly. If your nib and feed isn't any good, you've just used a whole load of ink and then 20 minutes later you still won't be able to write. But I've set up this nib and feed correctly, so that's what this pen should do. So don't write off the Ahab. It isn't a soft flex nib. I have heard stories that these steel nibs do become slightly softer, slightly more flexible through regular use. I've never really found it, but I suspect that that's because people are really pushing those tines in the nibs so much that the thing, eventually the metal is going to start fatiguing and going through its various structural changes. Let's go with that. And it will become a little bit more bendy, but it's also likely to become a little bit less resilient and not have the stiffness it's needed, the tension within the material to flex back right to where it should be. But, you know, each to their own. This is a pen to use however you want to use it. If you want to use it as an everyday writer with absolutely no pressure, absolutely nothing stopping you, you've got a really, really great pen. And these nibs are not scratchy. They're not the absolute smoothest nibs in the world, but they're fine. They're a lot better than many nibs, and they're an awful lot better than some of the Chinese fountain pen nibs. So I've never had a Noodler's Ahab with a dodgy nib. They're great, and they're just great. And this is why I love these pens so much, and why I have a collection, because I've always got some interesting inks that I want to use in these pens to experience the different ink colours and the different properties. I mean, it's great. Look at it. Absolutely great. So these are great fun pens. They're useful everyday writers, as long as you've got your box of tissues handy. So I encourage you, don't jump on a Noodler's Ahab if you're an absolute beginner, because you're probably going to get very annoyed and upset with it. If you're willing to put the time in, then absolutely get one of these pens, because you will learn a lot from it. You will also enjoy using it when you've set it up correctly. I mean, you can see, you know, when I first bought an Ahab, I had railroading all over the place, ink starvation. It was a disaster. Learned how to fix it, which actually took a little bit more effort than I expected, but that is my fix. And now you can see, you know, absolutely great, really good writers. So don't discount the Ahab, don't write it off, enjoy your Ahabs. They are good pens, and you can get them in a range of colours, so you've got something for every sort of taste. Enjoy your Ahabs. Go out there. This is a good pen, and yes, I do recommend it, but it needs you to put a little bit of effort in. That's all I really want to say, because I'm not going to get a comment from a viewer 6 months from now going, I bought an Ahab and it doesn't work. Watch the full video. Watch the video down below. You'll get it writing if you've got a bit of patience, and then you will love this pen. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.